Hello everyone and welcome back to KSI Morning Brief. This is Mashood and joining with me today is Anjana to take you through the latest on world markets and world news. To begin with, global markets. Stocks climbed last week as investors celebrated the resumption of more normal activity across big parts of the economy. Both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 gained over 3%, which put the S&P at just a 6% decline so far in 2020, while the Dow is lower by 11%. A few big name stocks will announce earnings results over the next few trading days, including Umbrella, a fabless semiconductor design company, Slack Technologies, and Zoom Video Communications. As illustrated in the chart, the 100 days since the stocks peaked on February 19th have been among the most dramatic and destabilizing in market history. The fastest ever 35% collapse from a record high followed by one of the strongest and most relentless rebound rallies in decades. The S&P 500 at last week's close of 3044 had recouped 70% of the total losses in the post-February crash. Looking at Asia, the fresh political turmoil erupting Hong Kong in recent days is reviving worries over capital outflows from one of the world's biggest financial hubs. The growing worry is that Beijing's latest intervention will finally undermine confidence in the city's priced legal system. Hong Kong's International Financial Center has been built on a huge talent and expat pool. Many people may leave, they will also take their money with them, said Kevin Lai, chief economist for Asia excluding Japan at Daiwa Capital Markets. For international investors and executives, much will depend on details of China's new security law and how it affects Hong Kong's judiciary and exactly how the US chooses to respond. Looking at companies in the US, Chinese internet giant Tencent Holdings Limited is in talks to invest 200 million US dollars in Warner Music Group ahead of the record company's slated initial public offering next week, the Wall Street Journal reported on Friday. Tencent is among a number of other potential institutions that could serve as an anchor investor to help shore up more than 1 billion US dollars towards a fundraising goal of as much as 1.8 billion US dollars. The offering is expected to value Warner Music at 11.7 billion US dollars to 13.3 billion US dollars. Looking at the trade war, a study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York finds that despite pronouncements from the White House, Americans are paying for the US-China trade war. The billions in tariffs paid back and forth between Washington and Beijing have reduced the market value of US-listed companies by 1.7 trillion US dollars during the course of the two-year-old tax offensive. The conflict will continue to weaken the investment growth rate for these businesses up to 2 percentage points by the year's end, the study said. Also, the study model found that policy announcements lowered US equity prices in a 3,000 company sample group by a total of 6 percentage points. Those outfits together command a 28 trillion US dollars market capitalization, so the 6 percentage point fall wiped away 1.7 trillion US dollars. That's a value equivalent to the national GDPs of Russia, Canada, or South Korea. Next, we have Anjana to bring you more updates on global news and COVID-19.
Thank you, Mashood. So looking at other global news, SpaceX delivered two astronauts to the International Space Station for NASA on Sunday, following up a historic liftoff with an equally smooth docking. It was the first time a privately built and owned spacecraft carried astronauts to the orbiting lab in its nearly 20 years. NASA considers this the opening volley in a business revolution encircling Earth and eventually stretching to the Moon and Mars. More news from US. Demonstrations against racism and police brutality have spread to even more cities across the United States as people in many parts of the country defied curfew to protest against the killing of George Floyd. Protesters in Minneapolis and Minnesota have pledged to continue until all four officers involved in the death of George Floyd are charged. Looking at Europe, Spain's government has introduced a basic monthly income for struggling families amid the growing hardships caused by the outbreak of coronavirus. The measures, which is expected to cost an annual 3 billion euros, is aimed at ending extreme poverty, which affects about 600,000 homes and 1.6 million people. Looking at England, the UK's coronavirus furlough scheme will finish at the end of October. From August, employers must pay national insurance and pension contributions, and then 10% of pay from September, rising to 20% in October. Also, workers will be allowed to return to work part-time from July, but with companies paying 100% of wages. Meanwhile, Renault is cutting 15,000 jobs worldwide as part of a £2 billion cost-cutting plan after seeing sales plunge because of the virus pandemic. 4,600 jobs will go in France, and Renault has said 6 plants are under review for possible cuts and closure. Renault, 15% owned by the French state, and which is in talks with the government about an £8 billion loan, has begun negotiations with unions about which factories could shut. Looking at Middle East, Saudi Arabia transferred 150 billion riyals from its central bank to its sovereign wealth fund as it went on an investment spree seeking to take advantage of recent market turmoil. Now looking at COVID-19 updates. More than 6 million cases of COVID-19 have been reported worldwide, including at least 371,000 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University. South America cases are rising as Brazil recorded its highest daily increase yet, while Peru announced more than 7,300 new cases. Brazil's 28,834 coronavirus deaths are the fourth highest of any country. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, 1,620 total cases have been reported with 10 deaths, and 11 new cases have been reported in the past 24 hours. Looking at developments on vaccine, Sinovac Biotech says it is 99% sure of its coronavac vaccine efficacy. As scientists and medical experts continue to work at breakneck speed to develop a vaccine, latest reports state that there are more than 100 potential vaccines in different stages of development to combat the novel coronavirus. China-made coronavirus vaccine could be ready by year-end, says government body. A Chinese vaccine being jointly developed by Beijing Institute of Biological Products and China Biotech Group company has completed phase 2 testing and may be ready for the market at the end of this year or early next year. Meanwhile, the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez celebrated the great results of the last few weeks when it comes to coronavirus cases. However, he announced that his government will be seeking a further 15-day extension of the state of emergency. Looking at South Korea, recreational venues in South Korea, including bars, nightclubs, and indoor gyms, will be required to keep a QR code-based customer log from June 10th onwards, and this data will be automatically erased after 4 weeks to safeguard customer information. So that's it from KSI Morning Brief. Do join us tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Till then, goodbye.